Okay, hi humans. This is part three of a series of three, the last part about desiring a man she cannot have. This is a thing that, historically was discussed in Chinese medicine texts written by men about how women who didn't have a male partner were prone to certain types of physical and mental health problems. For more background, you should see the other two. Um, let's see, let me get my little laser pointer, and here we go. I forgot this really should have gone in the previous one because my theme for today is actually the creepy stuff, and this isn't creepy. But I forgot, so it's in the wrong place. So here it is. So this Gongting Xian was a Ming Dynasty doctor, and he wrote in Miscellaneous Diseases of Women that, um, living as a widow is single yin without yang, and desires of the heart sprout but are not successful because she has desire but nobody to have it with. She's yin because yin is female. She's got no man. Yang is male. So because of this, she has aversion to cold and fever, or the fever and chills kind of thing. This is completely within the category of malaria. So, we should really understand that when they have this character, it's not always what Western medicine calls malaria. Anyway, so alternating fever and chills type of thing. And then he has a recipe, Chai Hu Igan San. So, yeah, restrain chai hu powder to restrain the liver. And, you could look at the ingredients. We've got chai hu. We saw in the version two, one recipe had fu, and, a bunch of stuff like from Yueju one, like Shenchu and so forth. Jurza, gardenia seed, mudan pea, lian chao. So a lot of cooling the blood, and some moving qi and blood herbs and so forth. Yeah, this is really a cooling formula. So if she has desire, you throw cold at it because desire is hot. You know, lust is hot, sex is hot. And so we cool the person down and their desires will cool down. Who cares about their spleen and stomach? So anyway, that's that one more formula for this kind of thing. Okay, let's get to the creepy stuff. There's a pretty famous doctor named Yu Tuan, Ming Dynasty doctor. You can see his dates here, and or the date this was published. And here's a really interesting discussion. Um, this is like a device that's often used in text. Perhaps someone asks, or you might ask, or, something like that. Someone who knows somebody asks, how do women conceive a ghost fetus? So, first off, what's a ghost fetus? If you Google ghost fetus online, there's a academic named Ely Wu, and she wrote like a whole article that you can get, an academic article. But it's probably equivalent to a false pregnancy today, where the woman believes that she's pregnant and she has signs of pregnancy, but she's not actually pregnant. But it could also be, an actual pregnancy that, you know, maybe the woman had sex and got pregnant, and to save face, a ghost fetus is better than somebody who's sleeping around. So, it could be various things, but in any case, that's the general idea. So somebody asks, how do women conceive a ghost fetus? And I, Yuchuan, say, what you think about in the daytime is what you see in the night. This is actually a line from Liezi, which is an earlier philosophical book. And so the idea is that dreams are really your daytime stuff that, that you see in your dreams. Nothing special, nothing esoteric. Anyway, he goes on to say, whenever the nature of a male or a female is lustful but deficient at the same time, minister fire of the liver and kidneys rises up every time. So, minister fire, the flaring up of minister fire, that kind of a thing. So a person who has taxation, they're exhausted and overworked, and timidity, their chi is weak, and it makes them kind of personally weak and startly and afraid of things. And so they often dream of intercourse with ghosts. Intercourse with ghosts is a thing, in the old books. It's not a big thing. It's not in every old book, but it's in enough old books of dreaming of intercourse with ghosts, which could happen to males or females. And it was not considered a good thing. So some people took the ghost part literally, and other people, just if you dreamed of something creepy or you dreamed of a person who's been long dead, then they'd call that dream of intercourse with ghosts, even if they didn't really think it's a ghost. So could be they believe in ghosts, might be that they don't believe in ghosts. So then this thing that's called a ghost fetus is really a fake fetus, according to Yuchuan. There's no actual intercourse with ghosts or deities that lead to a fetus. An ancient prescription book says infinite longing. And here's, that word that also means thought, but there's a second word here that makes it fairly clear it's longing. An inability to obtain what one wishes becomes white oozing. We saw that phrase in part 2, I think, some kind of discharge that's unclean, and white turbidity, more of the same kind of stuff. So this ooze and turbidity flows into the uterus, it binds up, it congeals into a ghost fetus. The root is the woman's own blood, the woman's own fluids, this oozing stuff, and her jing, her essence, gather together and congeal into a lump. And then she may also have chest distension and abdominal fullness, just like pregnant people do, people who have a real fetus. So how is this not a fake fetus? He's saying it's not a ghost fetus, it's a fake fetus. So someone said, again, I've read the medical experience of Hua Wuren, who's also called Hua Shou. He was a late Yuan dynasty doctor. Actually, he lived into the Ming dynasty, but he's always written about as a Yuan dynasty doctor. He said there was a female attendant at some temple, and they even give her name. I would be embarrassed, but her name was Yang Tiancheng. And this temple, she's a temple virgin, right? She's a temple attendant, and it's likely that she couldn't marry. So she's a, manless woman, as we've been discussing. Anyway, she was wandering around her temple on the veranda at twilight, a dangerous time when yin and yang are kind of mixed and not clear. And she saw a deity that was a god that was dressed in yellow clothing. So, is this a statue that she saw, or is this a vision that she saw? I don't know. Or is this a human that she mistook for a deity? Or was she hallucinating? I don't know. Anyway, she saw a deity dressed in yellow clothing. She felt her heart stir, and at night she dreamed she had intercourse with this deity. And after that, her abdomen gradually enlarged as if she was pregnant. they invited Huasho to treat her. He examined her and said, her being pregnant, this is a ghost fetus. And he gave her herbs to break blood, the same kind of herbs to induce a, abortion, a miscarriage, and to make the fetus fall, which is another word for inducing miscarriage. What came out was about 2 sheng of tissue that resembled tadpoles and fish eyes, and then she was at ease. Then she was better. Isn't this intercourse with a deity? So how much is 2 sheng? I don't know. It's not a small amount, but it's not gallons. And so something came out, she might have been really pregnant, but rather than admitting that she had had sex, or even rather than admitting that somebody raped her, she concocted this story, or maybe she really did have a vision. There are religions that are based on like a divine father and a human mother. So, who knows what really happened, but let's see. That's what Huasho's story is. Let's see what the story is from Yutuan, who is talking here. He said the event occurred. He said he's not questioning that something like this happened, but intercourse with a deity was not the real reason. And here he's using logic that many of us modern people would agree with. How could something formed of earth and wood, a statue of a deity, how could that be able to have intercourse with a person and have jing, have semen, to conceive a fetus? He says, it was not a deity deluding the girl, it was a girl's delusion of a deity. He's saying she was hallucinating. Look at this girl. She's growing older without a husband because she's a temple maiden. This is correctly called endless longing and unfulfilled wishes. These women just have to have a man to be happy, according to these doctors, these male doctors. So learned and virtuous scholars do not believe in delusions of heresy. So that's the story. She deluded herself into believing she was pregnant. Some tissue accumulated. They cleaned her out, and that is his explanation for it. Okay. So here, sorry, hold on. Hope that mute button works. Sorry for coughing. Anyway, so here's another creepy story that's similar in some ways. It's from Ming Yi Lian. We saw this book in part 2 of this series. In any case, so somebody named Dr. Liu treated an unmarried girl. This says a girl in the house, which means an unmarried girl. We saw this term before in the original formula for Xiaoyaosan and other places. So, she's young. She's probably reached puberty. She's, not yet married, but she apparently wants to be married, or they think she wants to be married. And by the way, in the old books, when they use girl, often that means an unmarried person, even if they're 30. And when they say woman, that means a married woman. So anyway, he treated this unmarried girl who was supposed to be a virgin, whose disease was amenorrhea. She wasn't menstruating. Various doctors had treated her, but none had figured out what was up with her. None of them had fixed her. So Dr. Liu looked at her and saw that her abdomen was enlarged like she was pregnant. He found her complexion and pulse to be strange. And so he said to the girl, your disease is not from having unusual dreams. Maybe she complained of dreams. He says it's due to ghosts and spirit beings. The girl didn't reply. She just ran off back to her bedroom. And then there was an old woman who was her servant, and she talked with her servant. And this is what she told the servant, who then told the doctor. She said, last summer I went under the veranda of the temple at twilight. You know, temples at twilight and verandas seem to be a dangerous place for unmarried women. Anyway, she was trying to cool off because it was summer, it was hot. And so she's in the shade under the veranda. I passed by a wooden deity and my heart stirred. You know, she thought this statue was handsome. That evening, I dreamed of a man who looked like the deity that I saw at twilight, and I slept with him intimately. So she didn't just sleep, but, you know, they had relations. I fell ill from this. My face became red from shame, and I didn't dare tell anyone. And so remember, she's talking to the maid, and she says, "Oh, the doctor talked about this. The doctor knew this. This Dr. Liu." The old woman then told Dr. Liu, and he said, "The girl's facial complexion is suddenly red, then suddenly white. This is shame, like she's blushing suddenly when she feels shame. Her pulse is suddenly large, then suddenly small. This is a haunting." And actually, that's a symptom I've seen in other cases when a person was possessed in the old books. So apparently, a pulse is suddenly large and suddenly small in more than one, you know, case that ends up being the person being possessed by some entity. Anyway, so this disease cause tallied with the complexion and pulse. In other words, you know, what she said, the story she told makes sense with the shame and the haunting. Even though it was severe, she wasn't suffering. I guess she wasn't in pain or whatever. He then boiled taoran for her, which of course moves blood. And so that's something that's prohibited in pregnancy, but he's using it to induce an abortion, or at least to clean out whatever is making her abdomen bulge. You know, it also induces a bowel movement, so forth. And then she passed blood and 6 or 7 pieces of something that looked like pig liver, all with orifices like fish eyes, and then the disease recovered. So, you know, another creepy story of ghost pregnancy, but it's due to, you know, manless women having desire. So, you know, this series of 3 you know, parts, obviously in ancient times they're not going to have, you know, feminists, you know, that are up to today's standards of feminism or whatever. So, you know, we can't be overly judgy of how these male authors wrote because it was the best that they could understand. On the other hand, we shouldn't just take this as, you know, like the way of risk for every unmarried woman, because some women, you know, are sexually active, even if they're unmarried, or some women are not interested in sex, or some women, of course, are lesbians and aren't interested in a relationship with a male, or, you know, there's so many other possibilities. And, you know, even if somebody longs for a partner, are they going to get these kind of symptoms? I don't know. Another question is this something only women suffer? There were a couple of times when they mention, you know, that a man with lust would be a similar thing, or a man with unfulfilled desires. So, you know, are men also susceptible? Of course, their symptoms might be a little different because they're not so blood-based as women. But, you know, there's lots of men who long for a partner, or, you know, who, you know, are not having sex with anyone for various reasons and may still long for it, but don't do it. There are monks that are, of course, men. There are people who are celibate for various reasons, you know, so maybe this can still be applied today. Maybe it can be applied to people of all genders, or maybe this is like a culture bound concept that we just don't need to pay any attention to. although I find it interesting. And I do want to point out that longing or desire can be complicated. Somebody could long for a mate, they could long for companionship, or friendship. They could long for touch, even if it's not sexual. They could long for sex. They could long for a baby. So, there are a lot of people who, have struggled with infertility and have such intense longing for a baby. And some of this seems to be about longing for a baby. Remember Judanchi's case where he said only if she attains happiness, which was like code word for only if she gets pregnant, will this resolve? And even beyond this kind of stuff, people long for fulfillment in their life, in their career, in their hobbies, in their, so many ways, so many types of longing. So, even though men also have longing, but men have always had more agency than women. And so men could try to obtain and fulfill their longing. A man could maybe long for a particular person that he couldn't have, but he could still have sex to relieve some of the pressure. And women really didn't have very many options. And besides, this is all described by male doctors. The women doctors that I've translated have never talked about this. They certainly have talked about women who really want to get pregnant, but not with symptoms like this. Somebody who needs to produce a male heir so her husband won't get a concubine. And it, sounds like they're more wanting to get pregnant to preserve their status almost, not because they're necessarily longing for a cute little baby to cuddle. So, you know, uh, is it differences in male and female physiology? Maybe that is a factor in it. But I think this brings up a lot of questions. And since longing and desire are still issues for modern people, it's worth like keeping this in the back of our minds in case we have a patient who does seem to have fever and chills type stuff, and various other symptoms. We could check their pulse when somebody talks about not being in a relationship, but really being sad about that, and we saw their formulas for this. Some of the formulas were like just way too cold, but the Shengdi Huang plus Chai Hu, plus Huang Qin plus other herbs might be appropriate in some cases. Mm. Anyway, it's something to think about, and I thought it was interesting. So this is the end of my series of 3